Hi, I'm Cindy Gomez-Schempp, and I'm here interviewing Jasper Schnieder, who is the USDA's Rural Development State Director for North Dakota and former legislator for the state of North Dakota. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Cindy.
I'm really excited because I've just gotten to interview Tammy Trevino, and now I'm here talking to you. You're both doing great things in the USDA, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit first about your background, because I know you, and personally and professionally, and I think for those people out there that don't know who you are still, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, I think that there's a real background of service in just your own family.
I appreciate that. Well, my story starts here in Fargo, born and raised. My parents, I think it's always important when you're talking about yourself, you kind of explain where you came from. My dad's also from Fargo, born and raised. My mom was born in Bowman, North Dakota, in the southwest part of the state. They both went to NDSU together and met, fell in love, and that's kind of where I came into the equation. And I have a younger brother, Rocky, and went to public schools here growing up. And just like a lot of people, my age, took some time to leave the state. And I think that's healthy. It gives you a different perspective and you learn a lot. I went down to the cities and I went to law school at Hamline University. And before that, I graduated from Jamestown College in Jamestown, North Dakota. And when I was there, I started a small technology company that grew into a pretty good size company where we reviewed computer hardware in the computer industry. And then, like most people that, starting out life, graduated from law school, I got married to my high school sweetheart, Kim. We started dating when we were juniors in high school, and we've been together, married officially for 11 years, and been dating much longer than that. And, when we started having the conversations about what do we want to do with the rest of our lives, we both decided that, moving back to North Dakota was a good bet. That's where we wanted to start our careers and raise our kids, and work to have the same opportunities for them that we had growing up, because we both had such good experiences. And moving back here, I started a law practice. I had the opportunity to practice law with my uncles at the Schnieder law firm. And in 2006, ran for the North Dakota legislature right here in District 21, which is most of central Fargo, and had the opportunity to serve and represent the voters of District 21, and worked on many issues facing the state of North Dakota in the 2007 and 2009 legislative sessions. And in 2009 was appointed by the President to be the State Director of USDA Rural Development. And with that, working across the state on a number of different issues, but personally moved the family to Bismarck, where we now live. And public service has always been incredibly important to me. I think that's one thing that was instilled to us, not just by my mom and dad growing up, but really my extended family, aunts and uncles. We always try to give back to the communities and state, and I care a lot about this place, and we've just got enormous opportunities in front of us right now in North Dakota, and with that poses some challenges, and I think it's important that we get it right.
Yeah, it is a great responsibility. I mean, we have a lot of development in North Dakota. The country is looking at North Dakota all the time because of the oil boom, because of our agriculture, because of our economic wealth right now. Tell me a little bit about the North Dakota 2.0.
Sure. Well, the North Dakota 2.0 initiative was an initiative that we started at USDA with the sense of what do we want the next chapter of our great state to look like. And I started it at USDA because, frankly, I care a lot about this state. I want to see us reach our full potential. And I wanted to make sure that we got a pulse of the people of what, not just what I cared about, but really what every corner of our great state, what the sentiment of the people were. But I wanted to make sure we did it right. And so the first thing we did in launching North Dakota 2.0 was to partner. And so we partnered with a number of well-known North Dakota entities. And then we picked a number of communities to go to across the state. We went to 14 different communities. Try to do them quickly here off the top of my head. We went down to the southwest. We went to Bowman, Dickinson. We went to the northwest, Watford City, Crosby. We held a big event in Bismarck. Went up to Garrison, to the north central part of the state, to Bottineau and Belcourt. Went east to Grafton, down to Jamestown, Linton, Oaks, and finally held the capstone event in Fargo. And we had about 700 people participate in this process. And throughout that, we got just a tremendous amount of feedback, both numerical data, but also just really captured a pulse of the people. And we partnered with North Dakota State University, NDSU, to help us kind of compile those results. And it gave us a good sense of where people are at on a number of issues and what we want to do to really define our own future.
Well, and you work on a variety of different, issues. I don't know if everyone out there knows exactly what the USDA does or what the rural development projects are, but your responsibilities as the director, if you could talk a little bit about them and then tell me about how you think we should invest in infrastructure and maybe even talk about what that is to you.
Sure. Well, USDA rural development, I think, is one of the best kept secrets in North Dakota. In fact, I think we have almost kind of a mystique about us because people, I think, recognize we do some good work, but they don't really entirely know what we do. In a lot of ways, probably the simplest way to think of us is we're sort of the credit wing of the Department of Agriculture. We're a large bank in many ways. We provide public financing for both small and large-scale infrastructure projects. We also do things like community and economic development. But just to give you an idea, in the past year, we financed about $670 million in North Dakota infrastructure projects. So in doing North Dakota 2.0, obviously I personally wanted to do it because I care a lot about this state and I wanted to get the feedback from the people. And that helps me make decisions as far as where these precious resources should go. But more importantly, from a USDA perspective, we want to ensure that we're making a sound public investment. We want to make sure that there's vitality in these regions. And you look at a state like North Dakota, we're a rural state. Every county in North Dakota is rural. Even if you get just right outside of Fargo, you're right in the heart of production agriculture. Our two biggest industries, energy production, agriculture, both very much rural industries. And so having that rural infrastructure in place, having that rural workforce is so vitally important to the long-term success of North Dakota.
And when you say infrastructure, what are you talking about in terms of, roads, bridges? What exactly do you mean by infrastructure, and what are all of the different things that could be?
Yeah, infrastructure is kind of a funny word, right? Because it kind of conjures up, I think, different images for different people. I think some people think roads, bridges, but I like to use kind of an expanded definition to also include the utilities, things like electrical lines, telephone, fiber in the ground for broadband internet, water and sewer systems. And I think even looking at an expanded definition of infrastructure, you can include things like housing, hospital infrastructure, school infrastructure. In an expanded definition, I think it's all of the above. And one of the neat things we do at USDA is we work across the board when it comes to infrastructure. We can help an individual purchase their first home, for example, up to doing a $200 million electrical project, and then everything in between. And so we financed a good portion of North Dakota's electrical infrastructure, our telecom infrastructure, our water infrastructure, homes, hospitals, you name it, we probably.
I know that there's other areas in education and childcare, and the state of North Dakota does have an oil boom. People have been talking about infrastructure quite a bit. Roads, bridges, and everything else you've mentioned as well.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your tour that you took was very well chosen cities where some of these issues have been very important. Talk a little bit more about what different communities need. What are the things that you think are most needed right now in terms of those things, and in the connection to the oil boom? Because what does the USDA have to do with all of this? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, what we do is we support rural communities. And in a state like North Dakota, that's pretty much the whole state. And the best thing we can do to support the oil industry, the best thing we can do to support North Dakota's economy, is ensure that we have vitality in those communities. But I think even more important than that is that you have a rural workforce. If you look at, pick your favorite industry in North Dakota, we have a workforce issue or workforce shortage. We just don't have the people to keep up with the pace of growth. And I think one of the most interesting things we heard in North Dakota 2.0, whether you were in Garrison or Grafton, or Watford City or Oaks, is how consistent the responses were with what some of the challenges were. And you think, something like the housing issue or the lack thereof. There's a shortage of available quality housing in this state. And certainly that shortage is at emergency levels in the oil patch. But they're facing challenges with shortages of housing in Grafton and Oaks as well. And I think what's interesting about the housing issue is there's so many, it's so multifaceted as far as what's driving up the cost of home, why it's difficult to produce more. But it's really transcended into a workforce issue. Because we heard from, at North Dakota 2.0, at these town hall meetings, it was such a big tent because you would have, you'd have the county sheriff there, you'd have the hospital administrator, you'd have the school principal, whoever it may be, and they'd be able to attract a sheriff or a nurse or a teacher, but retaining them is a whole different story because really two things that are become workforce issues that aren't traditional workforce issues and when you think of them, lack of affordable quality housing and then lack of availability of childcare. And the reality is the communities and the businesses that figure out those two key components are going to be the ones that really attract and more importantly retain the quality talent.
God, it sounds almost like the USDA has a state planning role in the way that you're talking about it. It's a really different way for me to think about it. Talk a little bit about the Strike Force Initiative. What is that?
Sure.
What is it doing for the state?
Well, it's such an exciting time to be in North Dakota, right? And it's such an exciting time to be involved with rural development because of all that's going on. What the Strike Force Initiative, though, is it's an initiative led by Secretary Vilsack, former governor of Iowa, to target areas of persistently high poverty across the country. And sadly, most of those are in rural America. And even in the land of prosperity, with North Dakota's booming economy, low unemployment, we do have areas of persistently high poverty, and primarily in our reservations. And so the Strike Force Initiative is a collaborative effort, really enabling all of the different agencies across USDA to have a more focused effort with our tribal communities to see if we can't move the needle and move their economies forward. And so we're not there to, people solve problems, right? Not federal agencies. And so we're really the enabler to organize the entities, see if there's things that we can do across our agencies, across other federal agencies, to see if we can't be more helpful. For example, I was at a Strike Force meeting this morning in Sisseton, right? And most of the Sisseton tribe is in South Dakota, but it's also on the North Dakota side, similar to Standing Rock in that way. And they were saying how they have a large buffalo producer, but USDA regulations don't allow certain buffalo to be sold or sold to school districts, right? Well, that doesn't make any sense, especially with the more importance of wanting to know where your meat comes from and local foods, that type of thing. That's something that as USDA we can take back to the folks the powers that be and say, look, there's the disconnect here. How come we can't use this locally produced beef to feed our kids?
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That was just one example.
But what do you see going forward for this initiative, and then a little bit more forward thinking, what do you think that 2.0 is going to do for North Dakota? Where do you see that going?
Well, I think the neat thing about North Dakota 2.0 is we have such a unique opportunity right now as North Dakotans to define our future instead of letting the future define us. We just don't kind of have to passively go along. If you look at for most of North Dakota's history, we've been a pretty static state, right? We've been static in population, static in industry, and now over the last 5 to 10 years or so especially, we're seeing a dramatic population increases in parts of the state that we haven't in a long time. We're seeing a diversification in our population. We're seeing a diversification in our economy. And so we need to be smart and strategic about what that future looks like. And that's really what the heart of North Dakota 2.0 is to get a sense of where people are at, what they think is important, and to be smart and strategic about making decisions, not just at the state level or the federal level, but also at the local level, within communities, within nonprofits, because change can happen from the bottom up. It has to happen from the bottom, or I should say it happens best when it happens from the bottom up. And that really was the goal of 2.0, is to have a kind of a humble understanding that we could get this wrong, right? And that's what we don't want to have happen. But to be incredibly precise and smart and strategic and engaging other people to make sure that we don't look back on this time of prosperity 20 years from now and wish that we had made better choices or wiser investments.
Oil boom and their bust, and they're going through another one again. Boom. I mean, so she says it does make you think about the second time around. You're kind of forward thinking in coming up with an initiative that would try to prevent us from doing it wrong in the first place. I think it's really great that she's here and that she brings her background of economic development and her knowledge about our state and industry. What do you see that partnership looking like, if you'd like to comment a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, the administrator's visit to North Dakota is important because she's oversees the Rural Housing Service, which, of course, housing being probably the biggest challenge facing North Dakota communities right now. And so her role is incredibly important. And I think as you look to the future of North Dakota, I think two of the best investments that you can make are into infrastructure and into people. Those are huge investments that will pay big dividends for generations to come. And every generation makes their big investments. And I think we need to challenge ourselves to be what's our lasting legacy, because we have such enormous opportunities in front of us. And I think it's so important that we really try to be bold and make a strategic investment into something signature versus just sort of sprinkling the prosperity. Because we have an opportunity to really change the game in North Dakota, to set us up for long-term economic growth and not just this short-term economic success, if we do it right.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate that you've taken the time to work on this initiative and that you've taken the time to give us this interview today. And thank you very much for bringing.
It's been fun. Thanks so much, Cindy.
All right.